just in terms of national policy, we've got two decisions we can make. We can either import our food or import our labor, and you got to choose one of them.
Coming up, we're talking to Adam DeGroot. Adam is an operator in the ag space. They have a farming business, a trucking business, and a couple tech platforms that they're launching as well. So it's fun to get into.
The Modern Acre is the podcast for builders in ag who think differently. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Myland, a soil health company that's revolutionizing agriculture. Through their innovative soil as a service, Myland partners with farmers to improve their soil health with the power of beneficial live native microalgae. The result? Healthier soils, more productive farms, and benefits like smarter water use. Discover how Myland can transform your farm at myland.ag. All right, Tim, today's the day. Long awaited. World Agritech is here. So if you are at the show, be sure to come say hi. Tim is the one in the farmer mode hat.
Yeah, if you're at the show listening to this podcast, you might be a little bit distracted, not absorbing the content, but we hope to connect with you there.
They're taking it on their commute in, Tim. What else would you be doing?
Bathroom break, yeah. Ty, I'm a little upset about your wardrobe for the event. Usually we keep it casual, kind of like farm vibes. You are wearing a sport coat today. I do not get it, but I guess you're going to be on the maid stage, but we're like opposite ends of the spectrum. Farmer mode hat and sport coat.
Yeah, yin and yang. This is the Tim and Tyler special. I had to get fitted up, Tim. I had to bring my A game being on the stage this year.
Yeah, you next to Friedberg. We're going to see who wins the best dressed award. That'll be good.
He could afford to be a little bit more casual. I could not afford that. I need to up my game.
This is really big for you, Ty.
Huge moment. Well, yeah, we're excited for the day. Excited to see hopefully many of you. I'm going to be drinking lots of cold brew. So Tim can be identified with the farmer mode hat. I can be identified with constant cold brew consumption. Tim, we talk about this podcast being the podcast for builders in ag who think differently. Adam's that guy. Adam is a builder in ag. He is just a machine. They have been started with a family farming produce business that they've grown into multiple businesses, multiple different industries now with trucking and logistics, and they're even incubating startups. Like, this is awesome what they're doing as a family in the ag industry, buying a business, scaling others, and we get into all of this in the podcast. And I just love the growth mentality of Adam and his family, and we get into all of it in this conversation. So we'll jump in with what's top of mind for Adam.
What's top of mind? Well, it's March. We're going into, planting season. We got some of the commodities we grow are peppers, summer squash, winter squash. Tariffs are on, top of mind. I think how those are going to impact, some of these markets and acreage decisions. But it's one thing in the produce business we don't have to worry about is the fact that there's always going to be volatility. There's always going to be something we build a plan for, then have to build another plan for. So yeah, just kind of watching the headlines on that.
Exactly. I mean, so well put. It's like anyone who's in ag, this is part of the drill. If you're surprised by it, then you're probably just haven't been around for long enough. Like me, I'm going through like this down cycle is like the first time, and just understanding and just trying to absorb what's happening. And obviously new administration, lots happening in the space. Adam, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what ultimately led you into ag and what you're doing now.
I run the DeGroot family companies. We got a few different enterprises within that. The oldest of which is DeGroot's vegetable farms. So we're a third or fourth or fifth generation. We don't really. There's some debate in our family exactly what it is, but we're a multi-generation vegetable and grain farm in central Illinois. So we're an hour south of Chicago. We're right outside Kankakee. So I farm with my brothers, and we farm on about 5,000 acres. We're growing potatoes. We grow about 1,000 acres of potatoes, peppers, cabbage, winter squash, summer squash, a few other items, and the corn, beans, and wheat as well. So it's kind of unique about that business in Illinois. Not really known for specialty crops, so that comes with some unique opportunities, unique challenges. We're close to a lot of markets there. We got Chicago an hour away from us, but we're really on an island in terms of, other producers, where there's a lot of regions that have a lot of the infrastructure that goes along with a especially crop economy we don't really have. So yeah, we're pretty diversified too. There's not many potato growers that also grow these other items. So we're diversified in that we sell quite a bit to processors, but also to food service and grocery retailers too. So yeah, some unique things there. Some of the other companies, in addition to the DeGroot's vegetable farms, that's seasonal. Being in Illinois, we've got a trading and sales brokerage side of the business called DeGroot Produce. So we're the items that we deal in and that we grow. We build year-round programs for. So we're working with other growers and farms, all over the country, all over Mexico, Canada. So I grew up on the farm. I gravitated to the sales side of the business from an early age. I had an older brother who's more, agronomy and mechanically oriented. So I think part of it was just, if you're in a family farm, you guys know everyone's got to have their own lane. When you got a bunch of overlap in those lanes, that's where it gets messy. So I really gravitated to the sales side of that business, and graduated from Loyola University in 2010. Came back, took over the vegetable sales piece of the family farm, and then started expanding the produce brokerage business that my dad had started, a couple decades prior. So as that business grew, we needed trucks, more and more. Transportation became more of a bottleneck. So we went from shipping a few months a year out of one facility to needing on-demand trucks all over the country, all over North America. And so in 2013, I started DeGroot Logistics. We're a 3PL. We're based in Chicago. Heavy focus on food and beverage. Now we got 40 people on the team. When we started, it was all produce. Service, it was kind of a spin off of our own transportation department within the brokerage and farm business. And, we learned, part of it was not knowing what we didn't know. But as we kind of grew and expanded the business, realized like the commodities we're hauling, the produce part of the refrigerated transportation economy. It's like one of the hardest, it's a lot more challenging to navigate for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of volatility. Reefer rates are just more volatile than some other modes out there. There's more claims, more freight claims. There's shorter lead times. It's, more detention. You're waiting, trucks that are picking up at facilities where you're loading pickles in Georgia. This stuff gets picked same day, so truck drivers just wait. So there's 100 reasons why it's just more challenging. And that really, we cut our teeth on. We like to say we cut our teeth on some of the harder commodities to ship. On the transportation side of the business. So really built that out. We're really growing them all, in tandem. We what's kind of unique about us, like most family farms, there's no outside, investors or money in any of these business, transportation business, brokerage. So we don't really have. We've got a pretty long view of this. We're in that way. I'd say we can kind of punch above our weight class, much larger competitors, especially in the transportation space. If you're in public markets, if you've got any sort of private equity funding, especially now in this market, like you're looking 3 months ahead and no further, so we take a longer view of that. And, so those are the three main operating businesses that I run. And then more recently, we're articulating more of a tech strategy. We've got, especially in the logistics space, we've got a couple startups, one we acquired and one we're building in house. And then it's really looking at areas that we think are kind of underserved in the logistics tech space, which is pretty dynamic. But one of them is called Doc 411. It's all about granular facility data for truck drivers. We feel truck drivers their needs are often overlooked. I would say it's one of the worst conditions now, that they're dealing with in decades or generations. Like it's not a great time to be a truck driver, just given where the rates are and all that. So we're really, we're building out these extensive facility profiles to get them information they need. And then we're letting them leave reviews. It's like a mechanism for them to leave reviews on these facilities as well. And then the latter one is Freight SOS. So it's like 100 things can go wrong in the course of the transportation, just shipping loads. Trucks can break down, you get some sort of claim, rejection due to some sort of issue. Maybe it's temperature abuse or something else. You can have a load stolen. Cargo theft is at an all-time high. So there's a list of things, and we're like and it's almost like a AAA for the truckload industry when something goes wrong there. We've got a on-the-fly solution. We've got a concierge team that helps resolve it. So a lot of stuff I zipped through, some pretty different businesses, but they all kind of, there's a lot of synergies for sure. And yeah, we're just looking to provide the best level of service.
Okay, so much to dig in on. The first question that came to mind is vegetable farming in Illinois. You mentioned some of the challenges of that. So, can you talk a little bit about kind of why you're doing vegetables and then how you're doing it in terms of how you're going to market and what that looks like?
Sure, absolutely. So the vegetable piece of our business started in the early 70s when my father and uncle, they really built out that side of the business. And it started as like a market farm stand, and a U-pick operation. So that was back in the day where people, you could get them out in the field to pick their own stuff. The U-pick is kind of a novelty now. There's still some farms around that do it in certain areas, but people really did it 50 years ago for sustenance. I mean, it was part of this is a cost effective way to procure stuff, and then the people can and store, over the winters and all that. Now it's more recreational, but so it started there and it's really evolved over the years. I'd say there's not like a 10-year period where the farms look the same through it, entirely. As Chicago grew, we kind of shifted to be more of a wholesale market into Chicago, as there's been consolidation, in with retailers and wholesalers and processors. We kind of shifted the number of commodities we've grown probably was like 40 or 50 in the farm stand days, and it's about 7 now. So, one of the big things, I mean, potatoes being the largest by acreage vegetable we grow, we started growing that in the late 80s, and we're kind of unique in that we predominantly grow for processors. So at the time, we started growing some chip potatoes, French fries, those kind of, potato salad, mashed potato, those kind of retail products. That's what we focus on a lot now. But yeah, the challenge is some of them are really, I mean, and again, this is the lane that I'm in, like I mentioned earlier, is really sales, marketing, transportation, just a go to market strategy for the farm. Being in an area where there's not, like say Idaho, for instance, where there's not a huge amount of acreage around us, the whatever our yield is in a given year, whatever our output on our farm, there's almost no correlation to what the market it does in that commodity. So in Idaho, if everybody has a great crop, they have a great crop, and then the price is low because they're, a huge percentage of the country's acreage. We can have an above average crop in a year where the market's very high. We can have a terrible crop in a year where the market's very poor. So the volatility of our performance in any given commodity is a lot greater than what it might be with some of these other regions. But we how we handle that is just diversification. Like I said earlier, we're doing a lot of different items. We've got different operating businesses and the trading side of the business too. I mean, we're trying to build out markets. I've always had the approach where if we need to sell, 10 loads a week of some item of cabbage, say, we need to be engaging, and talking to customers that are buying 50 to 100 times, like 5 to 10 times what we're going to produce. So we've always had, while we contract a lot of the stuff we grow a lot of it on the open market, which I think is probably something that was more typical decades ago, but for a lot of reasons, that's harder to execute on these days. But we try to be, take a very broad approach to like the relationships we have with customers and who we're talking to. And yeah, it's a lot more dynamic of a sale. I think in the vegetables production side of the business, that's probably something that's harder now than ever, is just having the most effective sales, game plan. And it just requires having a great, having a lot of conversation, like just having a lot of relationships all over the country with a wide variety of buyers, but having a great reputation too. Like if you don't have a reputation for quality and execution and consistency, then everything gets harder. The produce business, the names that are dominating the produce business are the same names as 50 years ago. And they're in 50 years, they're going to be the same names. Like it's, I think you can bank on that. So.
Yeah, the produce industry, it seems like the same names that have been around for decades are still the major players. So it's a really hard industry to break into. And when you're having those conversations with retailers and you have, a 4-week window of supply, if you're a seasonal producer, like they want that year-round supply. So it's really hard to kind of get traction there. Adam, want to dig into just kind of like the structure of the operation. You have the farming business, the trucking entities, the startups, like essentially have kind of a holdco type structure here. How do you reinvest into the businesses? Are they all standalones, or do you kind of aggregate and reinvest accordingly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of our approach on the tech side is we're these are startups, so we're building these out. I think the thing that's most exciting is just being able to kind of finance the development of some of these products and businesses internally. But yeah, they're all very cyclical too. I think that we're dealing with commodities. Even transportation essentially is a commodity of its own. There's times where there's too much capacity, too little, and all that. So yeah, no, I think we take a pretty opportunistic view towards how we do that. Our farming business, we're just to kind of speak to what we're kind of setting us up for what we're getting into. We're building out some more wider packing capabilities to be able to service the grocery, retail, and food service markets, in our area. And now with potatoes, we grow, we sell to processors, we sell to repackers. We'd really like to do more of that, in house. There's a handful of potato farms in Illinois. There's none that really do their own packing for the fresh market too. So that's really an area where we think we can, just kind of build new markets that complement perfectly the ones we're already, producing for. So yeah, I think Holdco, I know that term. That's probably an appropriate term for how we'd approach what we're doing. But yeah, that's kind of the neat thing too, is that the transportation, business is evolving pretty rapidly. I think that what's been so interesting about building businesses in the produce and the logistics and transportation spaces, transportation, the adoption of technology is so rapid, and it's a huge, the US truckload market is vast. So I've observed that, like, just the way middlemen and customers and vendors, kind of exchange information, they're probably 10 years ahead of where the produce market is. And you can just kind of see, and there's all sorts of analogs and opportunities to just take ideas, from the transportation industry and kind of apply them in the produce industry. Um, they're both relationship based businesses, but kind of that unit productivity matters too for sales teams and that. So yeah, that's been having those like a foot in both domains has been pretty interesting. And that's not anything new. That's not really a novel. You see a lot of 3PLs, a lot of logistics companies have their start in the produce industry for that reason. You see a lot of the leading players in produce markets have a transportation business kind of bolted on too. So it's not anything new, not anything, tremendously innovative we've done there, but it makes sense. It's just we're in especially potatoes for processing, probably one of the cheapest commodities in the produce space, in terms of, just what the value of a load is. So being effective on the transportation side, saving money on the transportation side matters tremendously. It's got a huge effect on your finance, your just operating results.
Totally. I love the synergy there, right? And as much as you can lean into that and then take advantage and develop new markets, a new business or new business models, it's really awesome to see.
Sure.
Adam, I want to dig into these startups because this is super exciting. Tim and I just built our own startup. You can maybe choose. I would love to like dig into one of these and learn a little bit more about like the idea you had. You obviously saw a challenge in the industry and like walk us through step by step what you did to scale it. And I'll let you choose which one you want to pick on.
Yeah, we can talk about Doc 401. So, I didn't come up with that one. It was founded originally in close to, it's 7 or 8 years ago. And, a couple of years after it was founded, I became friends with one of the founders, and great guy. And just, it was just and it still is, so unique. There are very few, there's an increasing number of them, but there are very few logistics tech companies that are all about the driver, and I think that's something we feel very strongly. There's millions of truck drivers in the United States, men and women. The conditions they work in are, like, it's some of the worst of any job in the United States, and everything depends upon them. Our entire goods economy depends upon them. And there's it's gotten to the point where I threw some note up on LinkedIn the other day. It was Congress has recently, a few months ago, got involved and spent time talking about mandating the availability of bathrooms for truck drivers in facilities. There's thousands of facilities around the country that won't let drivers use bathrooms on site. Like, that's nobody goes through anything like that. And over the road long haul truck drivers are away from their families, and just so we can have, food on our tables. So I think at the outset, like, what really intrigued me about it is that at its core, it's all about, humanizing drivers and just getting it, like, asking them, hey, what was your experience at this facility? And, like, hey, here's some, like, just providing more granular data, so they can plan their trips and lives better. So I thought that was just an incredible thing. So it's been around. It had been around for a while, and when we came in and we partnered, acquired a majority stake in it a little over a year ago, it was really taking that vision and like how do we kind of build this in the workflows of enterprise level, shippers and carriers and brokers, and really, yeah, a tremendous amount of data and relationships with drivers and all that. But how do we kind of build a more of an enterprise product around it? So that's what we're doing. There's this concept of shipper of choice in the transportation industry that every large shipper, aspires to. And it's basically, you can sum it up as carriers have options in sometimes some markets are stronger than others, but we're in a relatively weak market right now. But shippers want to stand out in a non-price way to their carriers and be a more, um, you know, just favorable partner to work with. So it's all the non-price things. It's the experience in the facility. Some of this boils down to like just professionalism, but a lot of it are tangible, like what are wait times at facilities? What are just is there parking on site available? Just the ease of picking up and delivering places, lead time for orders, and it's just all the different things that go into that. And shippers, if you take 1,000 different shippers, they all have different, definitions of what that means, what being a shipper of choice means. What we're really trying to do with Dr. One is standardize that, really turn it into a process that you can benchmark off of, that you can say, hey, this is how you're performing against your peers. And you really, a lot of organizations have a hard time really rallying the resource internally around like, okay, we want to be a shipper choice. What does that mean? So we're really trying to be their guide in that process too. And it's just cool because it's logistics tech, broad category, tremendous amount of innovation, a lot of money that's been raised and burned and in the last cycle here. But most of it is all about everything that's not the human driver side of it. So I think what we're doing is really neat. What Dr. One's building is really neat because it's really centered around that. It's like taking care of the men and women driving trucks in the U.S.
Yeah, it's a super unique approach of like focusing on something that's valuable for the driver, where a lot of the technology happening in freight is about optimization and kind of getting those unit economics down, like you mentioned. So this is a unique approach. What's the business model here, Adam? Are like the docks facilities paying to list on the platform? What does that look like for monetization?
Yeah, so shippers, and you think like enterprise shippers, these could be national food service or large grocery retail operations that have many facilities. Say, just taking an example, say you take a company that's got 40 distribution centers. So like kind of we start with like building out those profiles. The way that the logistics industry works, that profile might exist in hundreds or more, transportation management software systems around the country. And the consistency is minimal. It's like the EDI is how orders generally get transmitted. So there's just this big data quality problem. And a lot of times like it's just simple addresses, hours of operation. And what Dr. One profiles afford is there's 72 attributes. So it gets pretty granular. There's a lot of different attributes. It's stuff that's useful for drivers. If you're a dispatcher or a broker, like it might not seem useful. This might not be information you use, but drivers do. So we're kind of making the data more robust in that way. But to go back to the retail example, you got your core facilities, but you also have thousands of facilities you're picking up at. You have your stores that your internal fleets are delivering to. And so there's all this information. And at the same time, in the transportation industry, there's this huge driver turnover problem. So it's something there's quotes, it's different wherever you look, but it's somewhere between 50 and 100% of turnover annually. Most fleets, have a contingent of drivers that have been with them for a long time. So there's 100%. You might wonder how is there 100% turnover of a position? It is kind of crazy, but there might be 80% of the fleet that's like, it's been there for years. They're experts. And then there's 20% that might turn over every 3 months, so that's, I think, a pretty typical scenario with those kind of size fleets. So those new drivers, everywhere they go is new to them. So when you go somewhere for the first time and you're driving a commercial truck, and the delays and problems that you experience compared to somebody that's been somewhere 30 or 100 times they stack up and they cascade pretty quickly. And so what we're really trying to do is get the data to those newer drivers, or any driver that's crowdsourced from the wisdom of drivers that have been somewhere before. If you pick up and deliver somewhere many times, you get to know the stuff. You get to know where you can park, where to get a bite to eat. What can you drop a trailer and go somewhere and take a shower at a truck stop. So it's like, and those the minutia of those trip planning decisions. When they don't know, they're having to wait on site. It just leads to a worse experience. You can have delays from that. So it's what we're all about. I mean, I think we're trying to work with these large shippers and tell them like, hey, if you understand that providing this granular information to drivers and dispatchers can make their life a little easier, you're going to have quicker turn times. You're gonna have a higher on time delivery percentage, and the benefits will compound from there. So that's really the story we're trying to tell.
Love it. And so, Adam, are the facilities basically paying to claim their listing? Is that kind of the business model there?
Yeah, we'll have different kind of packages, but a large enterprise shipper, you've got, thousands of your facilities in your network. We'll have monthly subscription, annual subscriptions. That's really how we do it. The driver app, it's free for drivers. Drivers can use it to research locations, leave reviews. That's something we're committed to, that a lot of driver apps out there aren't, is free for drivers. But yeah, that's large shippers, large carriers, large brokers. That's who we're partnering with.
Adam, we're kind of bouncing around here because you have so many different companies, but want to get back to the farming side and just talk about the novelty of like you're growing specialty vegetables in the Midwest. Like typically when we talk about Midwest agriculture, it's corn and soybeans. You're doing things a little bit differently. So maybe just talk to us about just kind of like any challenges there, or like ag tech solutions that you're working on the farm, just different irrigation systems. Like farming specialty crops is quite a bit different. So maybe just talk to us about kind of tools you're using on the farm front.
Yeah, irrigation, we're blessed in Illinois. We unlike most parts of the country, we don't have a water scarcity problem. We're Zematic irrigation dealers actually in our area, so we've got a lot of center pivots. We're blessed with a relatively high water table. We've got some sandpoint wells that are 50 feet. We've got water, so yeah, no, it's so that side of it is essential. We've gotten to the point. This wasn't true 5 years ago. We really only grow like potatoes, for instance. It was only a couple of years ago we stopped growing on the corners. I mean, if we can't irrigate on it, we're not going to grow them. The economics and the just higher production costs necessitated that. And you go out west, and that's been how they've done things for a long time. Everyone's seen pictures of the aerial views of like circles of green amidst the backdrop of yellow. So we do that. Talk about lanes. This is very much not my lane, but my older brother's lane. He runs DeGroot fertilizer, and he's really introduced a lot of innovative, like carbon-based fertilizers, biologicals, and things like that. We've transformed how we've approached agronomy in a lot of fundamental ways. No follow-up questions for that because I'm probably over my head and wouldn't do that justice. But yeah, no, that's been a big change in the last few years. Labor always is an issue in agriculture, and I think our challenges with that are compounded by our proximity to Chicago. We're an hour from this metropolis where any sort of job, there's demand for manufacturing and like those kind of positions that would compete with farm labor. So we'll be in our third year this year of the H2A, participating in the H2A program. I honestly think without it, we wouldn't be growing peppers and cabbage and squash and some of the other things that we're growing. It's absolutely essential. There's another farmer from Illinois, that Sarah Fry, melon pumpkin farmer downstate, who had a quote that it stuck with me forever. But just in terms of national policy, we've got two decisions we can make. We can either import our food or import our labor, and you got to choose one of them. It's as simple as that. So if you want to see, and this is something just broadly, like consumer, everybody should have an opinion on this. If you care about food produced in the United States and you want to see it that way and see that grow, then you should be, for wise immigration policies when it comes to ag labor. The H2A program is incredible. I think it's a great example of the federal government doing an incredible job. That's like a win-win for everybody. There aren't a lot of headlines that talk about that these days, for sure. So that's something we care a lot about. But Yeah, I think those are some of the things that are always top of mind with us.
All right, Adam, as we wrap up here, gotta ask, what's your food or ag hot take?
Just going back to the what I mentioned, the transportation side of the business. The thing that gets overlooked is we're building, anyone that's building tech businesses, like if it's not at its core all about the human side of it, everyone knows these are relationship based businesses, how food's traded and produced, and the transportation industry, you know, how everything gets moved around. Everyone knows they're relationship based, but if at its core, the tech that you're building isn't all about people, and empowering people, then I think it's going to be a commodity, and I think the true competitive advantage, like the long, durable tech companies, are the ones that empower people the most. There's a lot of great stories in the logistics tech and the ag tech world that are, just they look at everything is supply chains as nodes and networks and all that. And that's great. And there might be some really cool things that get built off of that, but again, I really think within a few years, they'll be replaced by other things that are cool and faster and sleeker. And if you can build something that users, that people, that really meets their needs on a real fundamental human level, then you've got something durable that can last a long time. So that's what I've been, spent all my time trying to build is it's combining, whether that's your own team or vendors or customers, whatever, like it's got to be mind blowing. It's got to be something people care deeply about. So everyone looks at tech and commodities. Tech is at a fundamental level a commodity. Like the building, I think people are, in the cycle we're in there, that's being observed now. But the development of tech, any sort of software product is as much a commodity as growing potatoes is. It's how you blend everything together, and that's where you can build special things, I guess. So I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but there it is.
No, that was perfect and a great place to wrap it. Adam, as we wrap up here, how can our listeners get in touch and connect with everything you have going on?
Yeah, so the different companies, you can check out our websites. We've got DeGrootLogistics.com, DeGrootFarms.com, Doc411.com. Find some contact info on each of those.
So, Tim, what do you think of the conversation with Adam?
Super fun chatting with Adam. I talked to him a couple months ago on the farm front, and he was just giving me kind of a brief bio of what he's up to. And I was like, oh man, you'd be a perfect fit for the podcast. Kindred spirits of having a family farming operation and building businesses on top of it. So really cool to see what he's put together and kind of the flywheel approach of all these different businesses of like they're producing vegetables and there's gaps in their production. So how do we do a produce sales where we can source from other farms and have a longer supply window for retail? We're doing a lot of transportation to facilitate this. Let's bring that in-house. So just kind of bit by bit, getting higher and higher up the value chain. So it's been really impressive to see what they've built over 4 generations.
Totally. Well, hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. If you're a new listener, you found us at World Agritech, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We're just always delivering A+ content here on the Modern Acre, and we will be back next week with another fresh episode. Thanks for listening, guys.